All right, well, I will kick us off, and I'm sure a few more people will kind of dribble in as we go. But thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I know the weather is not as cooperative as we would all like, so hopefully everyone is staying dry. If everyone can make sure that they mute themselves before we start the presentation, that would be great. But I'll kick us off. I'm Jonathan Wilkins. I'm the Director of Outreach for Fusion Academy at our DC and Alexandria locations. For those of you that don't know, Fusion Academy now has around 75 campuses nationwide, with 7 campuses specifically here in the DMV, the DC, Virginia, and Maryland area. Like I said, I represent our DC and Alexandria location. And then Olga, who some of you might know, represent Columbia and Rockville. And then Carrie is over in Northern Virginia for Reston, Loudoun, and Tysons. We are a network of private schools that specialize in one-on-one learning, primarily working with students who have ADHD, depression, anxiety, or some other learning differences. And that's us, but I'll pass it over to my friends at the dorm who will be leading this presentation. Well, they'll make their introductions and take us away.
Hi, I'm Jessica Eisenberg. I'm a clinical coach and therapist at the dorm. And I'll let my other coaches introduce themselves.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy DiTomaso. I'm also a clinical coach and a senior therapist at the dorm. Just excited to be here today. Over to Tina.
And hey, I'm Tina Bryant, a clinical therapist, clinical coach and therapist, and I'm here to share some personal experiences of a client with both involvement at Fusion and the dorm. So I'm excited to share my experience.
Great. All right. All right. So just to sort of go over clinical coaching basics, you know, it could happen in real life. We do apartment visits. We sometimes take clients to drop off resumes. We go grocery shopping. Sometimes it is helping them buy clothing at Target. Any number of things can happen like outside of our office. But in addition to that, it's also action-oriented and solution-focused. So we'll create budgets. A lot of our clients have no concept of what a real budget looks like. Helping them create resumes and, you know, making sure they look professional so they can get jobs, as well as like shopping for basic necessities that they maybe didn't think they needed. Some other things we might do in our office is helping them come up with like action plans for socializing too. All right, so there are some terms that we like to use when we are talking about coaching. And this is like where we start. You know, planning is the first one. And so that's like, how do we accomplish our goals? You know, like how do we set long-term and short-term goals so the clients aren't like spinning their wheels and wasting time? And some challenges that come up when we're in the planning stage is maybe they can't commit to plans. Maybe coming to your appointments slips their mind, which is also where planning comes into play. Organization, which is like a huge challenge. And I should add, I meant to say this sort of beforehand, this age range and like young adults in general really do struggle with executive functioning, but even more so if there's like co-occurring issues such as anxiety, depression, or any other differences. And so frequently it also makes organization, the ability to develop and maintain a system, difficult. And so like the benefits of organization are, you know, we can find what you're looking for. You can get through your next essay more easily because you've made an outline. And, you know, the challenges are typically the continued disorganization. So being unsure of when things are due. I'm not sure how many parents have heard, I don't know, when assignments due. I think those are sort of common things we see. So in addition to the other two, time management, helping our young people understand how long something's going to take, and how to use their time wisely is like pretty key here. Because in my experience, it usually takes about an hour or two longer than they think it's going to take. And so like the goal would be that they learn to budget their time efficiently, they correctly estimate the amount of time needed to complete a task, hence sort of understanding that maybe it's going to take 3 hours to write that paper, not one. And some, no, that's fine, we could go. All right, so some of the more like cognitive, terms that we might use, which would be like task initiation, which is the ability to start tasks when they need to. And so it is ultimately what's going to allow them to do things they don't want to do. And task initiation is like really a major challenge. And one of the things we focus on a lot in clinical coaching. Like, especially when it comes to like, I'm sure you see it with school, but when we're getting to like the young adults getting a job, it is just like convincing them to log on to Indeed. It's just getting started, ripping the Band-Aid off. So like positives to that would be they become more efficient, they are able to self-prioritize. And the challenges are procrastination, a hard time transitioning from one thing they're doing to another. I think it's easy to get sort of tunnel vision. And so that transition to doing something else can be really challenging. And I'm not sure if working memory gets thrown around a lot, but that is basically the mental process that allows us to hold information in our minds while working with it. And so that's like being able to follow multi-step directions, being able to apply previous experiences to current experiences and use that as like an action moment. And challenges are, much like procrastination, it's being absent-minded, needing frequent reminders to complete tasks, maybe has a hard time remembering multi-step directions, which is something we see a lot. Like maybe they're following instructions for the first half of the assignment and then suddenly they stop. And so that has to do with working memory. And so this is sort of, cognitive things. Metacognition, which is like being aware of what you know and using that information to help you learn. And so we like to also call that like insight. It's great if clients have like insight and perspective on themselves and others, and can accurately assess their own performance, their strengths and challenges.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Like a common question we ask clients is like, what are your strengths? And it's actually a hard question to answer sometimes because they haven't thought about it or they don't know, they don't have that frame of reference. And so that goes into challenges where they don't recognize their own strengths or weaknesses, or they don't recognize the impact of their behavior on others. And so maybe it seems like they're being thoughtless or unkind or careless, but really there's that lack of, cognition and insight there. All right. And so attention, I think that's pretty commonly used, and that's being able to focus on a person or task for a period of time and being able to shift attention when needed. And so the goal would be that our clients learn to stay focused, or at least learn tricks to help them stay focused. Sometimes it's hard. And we want them to be able to stay focused for like a period of time and ignore distractions. And if they do get interrupted, like return to the activity at hand. And challenges are becoming easily frustrated, boredom, their phone, the TV, and literally anything. And so, in the action part, we look for perseverance and like resiliency. So this is the ability to stick with the task, not give up, and watching them sort of being able to struggle through something that they really find challenging or boring. Because I think boredom is a major factor here. And so like in order to persevere, we look for setting goals. They're able to continue to work on something that doesn't necessarily provide them with like immediate satisfaction. It's getting them to get past instant gratification, so they can achieve long-term goals. And the challenges are the same as the other ones, which is that they're bored by long-term tasks. They are prone to giving up easily and readily. And it's scary when something comes across as overly difficult. And so flexibility is also really important because we want our clients and young ones to be able to adapt to situations and deal with change. Change is really hard. I mean, even adults struggle with change. And so being able to see like flexibility or cultivate flexibility is going to be really important for them to continue to achieve those goals. So they can learn from their mistakes, they can try and take on other perspectives, try new skills if the first ones aren't working. And like the challenges with inflexibility is they're gonna have a hard time adjusting schedules, become angry. You can sometimes see some temper tantrum behavior, and overall like fearfulness of trying new things or continuing with the project at hand. I think, is that my last slide? Oh no, I have one more. So the social pieces of coaching and what we were going to try to encourage them to work with, so that they could have like happy, healthy social lives, is the ability to regulate themselves and their thoughts and actions. So if they're able to regulate their emotions, tolerate frustration, and is not overly reactive, they're more likely to be able to cultivate meaningful relationships and accept negative feedback or criticism, like gracefully, or come across with like well thought out responses to things that are posed to them without becoming upset. And then like the challenges to regulation of affect would be that they are easily upset, they're moody, they're unable to regulate their emotions, they snap at their friends or family, which is, not conducive to them having those meaningful relationships we want for them. And social awareness. And we see this a lot of clients too, where there's a struggle to understand how their behavior affects other people, and how their behavior might be deemed as like inappropriate or distracting. And so, what we hope for when it comes to social awareness is they learn to read the room. They can read nonverbal cues, they recognize the needs of others, they see other people's perspectives. And this sort of ties into a lot of the other terms I went through. We want them to be able to be resilient. And so the challenges with like a lack of social awareness is they're going to disregard other people's feelings because they don't notice them. They don't understand them. And they're going to miss the social and verbal cues that are important. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess. So Jess really went through all of those key concepts in executive functioning and gave us a nice frame of reference for how we can talk about this next piece, which I'll share with you all, is how clinical coaching can help improve activities of daily living for young adults, for the clients we're working with, for your children, for the students at Fusion Academy or elsewhere. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what is struggling to launch. What are we actually referring to here? Jess gave a lot of excellent examples of ways in which young adults may have difficulty in regulating their emotions and ultimately learning how to meet their own needs and the demands of life around them, the demands of their environment. So when we say that someone is struggling to launch or in that space of failure to launch, it can certainly mean a lot, and it might depend a little bit developmentally where someone is. But right now we're referring to that piece of someone having a difficult time taking care of themselves, managing their emotions, regulating their mood and their affect, taking actual care, physical care of themselves. The things we do daily, sometimes without thinking about it, right? Brushing our teeth, changing our clothes, getting up, and also our social interactions. So a lot of times individuals struggling to launch also isolate, find themselves shutting out and not in a space where they're interacting with peers, they're interacting with teachers, with coworkers, with family members, really beginning to find themselves kind of in the four walls of their own bedroom. We can see a dependency trap or maladaptive cycles that can come from this. So really well-intentioned parents might want to help encourage their young adult by saying, you're going to be fine, like you can do this. And that statement may then result in their child saying, you don't understand me, like you have no idea what I'm going through. And that can turn into a cycle of upset feelings, of misunderstanding, of lots of speaking without listening, and really reinforcing isolation, reinforcing this being stuck and having a difficult time with management, with moving forward. So when we talk about activities of daily living, there are a couple ways that we can kind of categorize these, and ultimately they move up in complexity. So if we start on the most basic level, looking at basic activities of daily living or of daily life, we're thinking about things that are more of that physiological self-maintenance. The stuff like bathing, brushing teeth, getting dressed, feeding yourself, really caring for basic human needs. And then taking it to the next level, or our next level of activities of daily living, one might consider more this complex instrumental phase of becoming independent or more involved in the community. So that might look like somebody learning how to manage their finances, keeping appointments, using their Google Calendar to track those appointments and show up to appointments, taking public transit, kind of getting out of their space. And then more advanced activities of daily living are complex, or the sort of self-actualizing pieces. So someone finding joy in leisure activities and mastery activities, someone taking on work, whether that's job or really diving into their schoolwork and progressing in school. Might be something like planning a fun trip with friends or family, or those things that can bring more joy to life. And of course, we work with clients here at the dorm that struggle with all of these levels of activities of daily living, not only the more advanced or instrumental categories, but even things like brushing teeth, showering, changing their clothes. So some examples kind of already talked about here, and Jess gave a lot of really nice examples as well, where we see challenges with executive functioning, challenges with caring for yourself, with participating in those activities of daily living. And this really can be due to a number or a variety of factors. Some of these might be personal factors. So someone, a young adult who may be dealing with a mental health challenge or disorder, diagnosis, having a lack of actual practical skills, so never having been taught or shown or had the space to take what they learned and apply it, and really utilize those skills that we get from our parents, our mentors, our peers, and those supporting us. It can be due to interpersonal factors, family conflicts, loss of a loved one or a relationship, right? Grief, and certainly also community and societal factors, thinking about things like trauma in the community, what's happening in the world, laws, regulation. All of this can contribute to a young adult struggling to launch. So as a clinical coach, we really want to encourage and to help our young adult clients start to apply some of these executive functioning skills in different avenues of their own life, and certainly as it relates to the activities of daily living. So we'll start often really at the beginning, working with young adults to assess, to plan, to organize, that metacognition, some of those those terms that Jess first introduced. When we meet with clients here at the dorm, we really do start at the beginning with an assessment, with gathering more information and more of understanding of the complexity of who they are and what drives them. What kind of strengths do they have? What do they excel at? What do they enjoy? What needs might they have? What are their abilities or their preferences? That's that SNAP assessment there. And also identifying really early on at the beginning of treatment, at the beginning of our work together, what goals are. And we work with this model, this SMART goal model, which many of you may be familiar with or may not have heard of before, but ultimately it's doing goal setting with really specific measures in place. So being specific in the goal, what is the actual goal, right? Might be making it to class every day that week, or turning in assignments on time, communicating with their teachers, measuring that goal. How are we going to measure that? How will we know that someone made it to class every day that week, that they did follow up with that correspondence from their professor or someone who has reached out to them, right? How are we measuring that? And then ultimately, we want to make sure these goals are attainable, that they are outside of that zone of low challenge or not engaging, but not so challenging that our young adult clients are really struggling and finding themselves back in that sort of pattern, these maladaptive patterns or cycles. We want to set realistic goals as well, right? Attainable and realistic really going together there, and have a specific time bound measurement on that. So when someone will achieve these goals. This is something that is done, as I said, really at the beginning of working with young adults here in our program, and is ultimately ongoing. It's something that happens in a continuous sort of rolling basis. Once we move into the action phase, we are really taking steps towards those goals. So in the clinical coaching setting, we are action oriented. We're working on moving the needle forward and stepping away a little bit from that sort of processing space. So it's task initiation, it's the getting things done, it's the checking in, it's the having the plan to move forward with one small step of that goal, the time management components, the attention, and working to help our clients continue to attend and move forward with their goals, to redirect their attention if it's slipped or if it's been lost, and working with our clients, our young adult clients, to emotionally regulate, to build skills to continue to manage their feelings, to be able to express those feelings and not get wrapped up with emotions or intensity of emotions. And then as we look really at this sort of evaluation and maintenance phase of the work we do here, that's when we're measuring goals. We're checking back in and saying, how are we doing with this particular goal that you have? How successful have you been with this? What has gone well? What have been problems that have arisen, and can we do some actual problem solving, some real concrete brainstorming and creating a plan and following through with that problem solving. It's bringing back in that executive functioning skill of being flexible, understanding that there may be new information that comes up or things that change in our environment and our circumstances as we're working with these young adults and as they're moving forward with their life and with their goals. And so how can we be flexible to make adjustments if and when necessary? Those are things we're constantly talking about in session. And that kind of leads us back to almost the beginning in some ways, back to planning if necessary, back to assessment, back to goal setting, back to review, and taking the time to celebrate the triumphs, the successes, the changes that are occurring. a really important component of working through changing someone's ability to manage their life and their life's demands is for the coach to serve this role of a cheerleader, of being encouraging and gently nudging someone along while also validating their experience throughout the process, and continuing to keep things moving forward in that sort of action-oriented space. So I'll talk a little bit here. I think I move past this slide. There it is. Roles of the coach. They got switched around. So our roles of the coach is to really help guide our young adult out of that stuck phase. And that is through many avenues of skill development, helping to support skill development, to work on problem solving, to do that goal setting and achievement, and encouraging and helping young adults to develop and improve their interpersonal skills. So I talked a bit about how clinical coaching is action-oriented, it's solutions-focused. We're really staying focused on solving the problem, on working towards the goal. We set firm boundaries and clear expectations and continue to check in with those boundaries if and when necessary. Accountability is a large component of serving as a clinical coach and really helping to hold our young adult clients accountable. And we ourselves, as the coach, work on modeling the behavior and on redirecting when attention has shifted or when focus has derailed. We offer that support, that supportive environment, the validation, the encouragement, the compassion, really critical components of serving as a clinical coach. And the evaluation and feedback, again, bringing back up validation, because that is a key component of the ingredients, the special sauce that we deliver here through clinical coaching. Finding ways to adjust and reaffirm if necessary, to reaffirm how we're measuring something, how we know someone is moving towards their goals. And the clinical coach also helps to psychoeducate, to teach, to provide education to both the young adult or family, members of the young adults, and also other supports that are involved in that person's life. We help to teach practical skills and really follow through with applying those practical skills, and then providing that reinforcement piece, making sure that when someone does learn a coping strategy or skill for emotional regulation, that we're recognizing when they utilize those tools, reinforcing it positively and encouraging them to continue to practice with emotional regulation, with that skill, both inside our space, our coaching space, or at school, at home, and any of the other places they may be. So I switched my slides around as we went through this. And so we talked now, I already went through how we kind of apply the roles of the coach to help young adults really get unstuck, right? To move forward and to engage with their activities of daily living, as we looked through this in through the lens of executive functioning. But it's important that we bring this all together. And that's another key component of clinical coaching, is that we work with our young adults to really, really review the progress that they've made, to highlight the progress, the growth that they've seen, the evolution throughout these different phases of planning, of action, of evaluation. There's a communication component, communicating with the family and closing the loop with additional support providers, teachers, psychiatrists, other people that may be working to help that young adult with wherever they are in their life, whatever struggles they're managing. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Tina, who is going to give a more concrete case study example of how we've used clinical coaching with a client's Fusion.
So yeah, we have a few clients right now that are a part of Fusion, and I know we're getting more. So it's definitely a partnership that has been working well and that really like supplements each other. So this client, I'm gonna call him Mickey Mouse. Definitely been working for him for some time now, and they are doing wonderfully. But first, let's start at the beginning of their journey. You can change slides. So these were some of their initial executive functioning needs. A lot of these are what we described early on in the presentation. So they were struggling a little bit with time management, definitely procrastination, and prioritizing more pleasurable activities over like functional activities, or like scheduling that psychiatrist appointment, turning in that assignment. And also I noticed that they were allotting less time than required to sort of complete tasks such as homework. Task initiation, big one. Another procrastination piece. They required several reminders from me and other dorm staff just to like get simple tasks done. Metacognition. What's interesting about this client is they had a really good sense of their strengths, but not so much of some of their weaknesses and some of their executive functioning skills that could be improved. Normally we see it sort of switch, like people are very quick to be able to talk about their weaknesses and not so much their strengths. But in this person's case, I think it was a matter of psychoeducation and just how they are. Attention is one that was evident to me during sessions. Definitely got distracted often and went on tangents in conversation to the point where sometimes I would get lost in the conversation and forget what we were talking about. So that was a little bit difficult at first. Flexibility, hesitant to consider a different way, definitely resistant to change. Like Jess said earlier, a lot of us are resistant to change. Organization was a big piece we worked on in the beginning as well. If their schedule would have changed, it would take like weeks for them to remember and show up on time to the actual like current appointments that they were scheduled for. And they never check emails. So I'd always have to make sure I called and texted to make sure that the messaging and whatever we needed to get across to this client would get across. And just in general, we communicate this to our clients. With organization, at least, it's very important to have your own personalized system. What works for me doesn't work for you. And so definitely sort of teaching this client about that and then helping them to develop this system was something that I knew that we would be working on. Some self-described and also observed for me strengths of this client are very, very logical thinker. Very empathetic, always caring about others, always making sure that they're supporting others, peers, family members, social relationships. One that they're very proud of is their efficiency, always trying to get stuff done quickly. I know that was a little bit at odds with homework assignments, trying to get them done as fast as possible so that, they could get on to the next thing. And, sometimes efficiency is great. So definitely consider that a strength. Determination, very determined client. Very determined client. They have a great sense of self-authority. Like they trust themselves, they trust their sense of logic. They're pretty confident and also very social, very, very outgoing. So, all those things can be used to sort of help apply to some of the executive functioning needs of this client and help them sort of learn and grow with that. Quick note, I just wanted to mention that executive functioning is something that does not just come up at school. It does not just come up in treatment. Where they live is where a lot of these tasks and these skills are utilized. Daily living skills. That's at home, right? Doing your laundry, brushing your teeth. So many students / clients live with their parents. Some live on their own. And some live in residential buildings. So this particular client lives in a house that we partner with pretty closely called Palisades House. And, they truly supplement the support and growth of our clients, especially in executive functioning. Here's just a list of some of the ways that I've seen they've really helped. They're structured. So just the very nature of how they operate can help set a good example and like a good routine for our clients. They're safe residents and they have staff there 24/7. So if anyone needs assistance or encouragement or feeling down about maybe like some of their procrastination, you know, they have someone there to be there with them and help them get through it. Serves as a great, you know, source of accountability. I mean, accountability is one of the best resources that you can have to help you get through executive functioning difficulties. So as coaches, we do a lot of that in hopes to sort of teach clients their own accountability, but also the staff at Palisades and the peers at Palisades, you know, all of that is like a watchful eye. And, you know, when people think that they're being watched or judged or, you know, noted on, that helps give them the accountability they need. And that's certainly what my client benefited from. And then lastly, like, you know, a residential house like Palisades is very good at maintaining boundaries for success and general safety, which can help our clients focus on what needs to get done. Here's just some of the things that helped my client, like truly some of the just day-to-day things like having meals, curfews, reminders was a big one, and medication management, just because sometimes with organization, our clients forget to take their medication. You know, they're not necessarily doing it on purpose, but they might wake up and if they don't have a morning routine or, you know, they don't have a regular structured schedule, they might just forget that really critical, important thing to treatment. So here's a big slide, sorry about that. But in my relationship with this client, we do what many of the clients here do. We do weekly coaching one-on-one, me and the client. Their parents also participate in coaching once a week, or now once every other week. We definitely engage in real-time updates, all the Palisades House staff, the parents, me, and also the Fusion Academy campus director is very, like I said, transparent and like present in our email chats and our text chats, email chains and text chats. So it's really helpful just to know what's going on and for everyone to be on the same page. And then oversight of weekly group schedules, something else we do in coaching, which serves as the bones, the structure, the skeleton of our client's week, which is again building a healthy routine, and was very, very important for my client. And it you know, matches with their set of classes, which every week is the same. So, you know, it helped fill their time so that there wasn't like a lot of downtime, and again, keeps them motivated. One thing I really truly appreciate from Fusion is that you can sign up for daily automatic course progress updates, and they're pretty detailed, and they're just really wonderful to get just another perspective of how my client was doing. And it was so easy to see the patterns and how they matched up with like what I was seeing in coaching, and also from what their teachers were seeing in class every day. So, you know, these are just a few things that me and my client have done in our sessions. We check in about outstanding homework assignments, again, thanks to those updates. We check in about mood and emotions and physiological status, you know, how they're generally feeling. We process and strategize about their motivation levels for and achieved progress towards their goals that they established in their treatment plan. With this particular client, they definitely focus on goals regarding social things. And so that's one thing that I have to sort of do a reality check with this client sometimes, is like, well, you're still in school, you know, you got to get this done. That's part of your life right now. So even if you don't necessarily like having that goal, it's something that you'd agree to by going to school, and therefore we need to incorporate that into our lives. Sometimes we got to do the things we don't enjoy so much. Definitely, we've discussed the application of social skills and executive functioning skills in everyday life. We've reviewed communication and behavioral patterns via like something that might have happened throughout the week, or an event that happened that they want to process, and we really break it down and say, well, what do you think was at play here? Like, what executive functioning skill, or what social skill, or what behavioral pattern did you notice here? So sometimes we do role play, you know, we can get creative, but just to really break it down and have them learn about what they've actually gone through. Reminders, again, that's one of the biggest things that me and this client have done, is reminders of expectations from clinicians and their teachers, reminders of their appointments, their doctor's appointments, their classes, their class changes. one thing that really is necessary, especially with like attention skills, is redirection during sessions. So if I observe like we're getting down a path that may not be as applicable to what we set out to do at the beginning of that session, then redirection is sometimes necessary. Definitely psychoeducation and brainstorming on helpful strategies. We search the internet, we search Google together on how we can help them improve on the areas that they need to improve on. Like, for example, how to make a calendar work for you. So like not just using a calendar, but like what aspects of that calendar and which calendar is best. Is it Google Calendar? Is it iCalendar? Is it, digital organization apps? We've researched a few of those. So yeah, there's lots of tools out there, but you got to make it work for your system. And then last but not least, like us as coaches and therapists, we're models. We model communication and organization skills. So, if we're disorganized, our clients will pick up on that. And I think that's definitely something that has helped this particular client. So here's just a review of things that I truly feel like obviously helped this client get to where they are now. They've made such progress, and it's truly been wonderful. The constant transparency between the residents of the client, their family members, dorm clinicians like me and their therapist, fusion director, shout out to Gretel French, she's wonderful, very like present and available, and also fusion teachers and those updates. Like I truly owe a lot of Michael's progress to just the amount of communication we had between all of us. And I also noticed that like when we sort of lost some of that communication, when we thought everything was doing wonderfully, the client sort of slipped a little bit. So we picked that back up again, and sure enough, the progress was right there. So definitely that. The availability, knowledge, and flexibility of fusion staff to update with current issues, outstanding assignments, like what's happening in real time, of like what needs to happen for them to get on to the next grade or to get on to the next year. Like that was really helpful. Supervision and our teamwork at the dorm, also really great to problem solve and just work through some of the issues that the client has been going through. Regular treatment planning, like Amy said, it's an ongoing process, and it's constantly something that helps the client refocus and gain that motivation to sort of know where they're going and be able to get there. Consistent encouragement and support from all areas of life. Again, it's a team effort. Every single one of the aspects of this, home, family, treatment, school, all of them are truly, truly important to a client's recovery. So encouragement from all those areas can make all the difference and create a happy, hopeful young adult. So I just wanted to end with a testimonial that this parent actually suggested for me to use here. So I'm proud to read it real fast. And this just sort of gives you a peek at how they're feeling. This is the parent of this client, Mickey. So let me find it. Here we go. Okay, quote, "My teenager began at the dorm last year. They were excited to live in a new city, Washington, D.C., begin school at Fusion Academy, and have the opportunity to socialize and start their life up again after living at 2 different therapeutic boarding schools. Initially, there were a number of challenges. My child was not able to transition easily, but the dorm was both patient and provided the structure and support they needed to slowly thrive. While at school at Fusion, they got to test out new DBT and executive functioning skills learned at the dorm. It has been very nurturing, supportive, and positive for my child. My child picks which support groups they like to join, along with the weekly coaching with their therapist. That same therapist then, and they're talking about a coach, that same therapist then connects back to me and Fusion Academy as much as necessary to make sure my child is getting the active support they need in all the areas that they are weak in, such as turning in assignments on time and socializing in an age-appropriate way with peers. I'm grateful beyond words for what the dorm has provided us. My husband and I have the support we need too. I appreciate the bi-weekly check-ins with us as well. The dorm also provides very helpful Zoom classes for parents to participate in. These have been very valuable, and I feel like I'm a part of the community, not just an isolated parent desperate to find connection and resources for my child. Many heartfelt thanks to the dorm overall. We were also made to feel very welcome. We deeply appreciate the mental health services provided that enriches our and our child's lives, and also for their close partnership with Fusion Academy. Signed, proud parent. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you all so very much. That was great. I'm so happy that you brought up the idea of failure to launch. That's something that that we hear a lot from families, and it can be so concerning. And so just glad you were able to touch on that in components of your executive functioning. So thank you guys so much for all of that. It was so wonderful. Now for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, we're really just going to open it up for a Q&A. And so there's one question already in the chat that I'll read out, and then you know, if somebody from the dorm wants to answer it, please do so. And then any other questions, feel free to put into the chat. Likewise, feel free to come off mute and video as well, and just ask your questions directly. But the first question we have is, do you have any resources or suggestions for helping young adults navigate health services? Not issues with keeping appointments necessarily, but like how to understand where those records are, how to interact with health insurance, and how to move from one physician to another, how to read a statement form to a doctor's office, etc.
That's a really great question. And certainly Jess and Tina, feel free to chime in here. Direct, like, go to this website and pull this PDF off the top of my head, no, but ultimately these are the kind of things that might be talked about and worked on within a coaching session. And so working to help young adults navigate healthcare, helping anyone navigate healthcare, quite honestly, can be really complex and really challenging. And so utilizing a system to stay organized, to keep information in one place, to learn how to do the practical skills of looking at the back of an insurance card and pulling up the website, finding doctors within network, and really kind of being present with the young adult while they're doing that. So one of the biggest things that kind of comes up to me in result of sort of answering this question is not simply handing them a list of questions to take, or that can be helpful if they're going to the doctors, but really being present during the process of them doing it themselves. So strategizing, okay, what's the problem? You want to stay organized with all your appointments or your medical records, your medications, the doctors you're seeing, and being present in that process while encouraging them to actually take the steps themselves. So to call the doctors in our session together, but have them do it, have them be the one to do it, to do some of that role play. That's kind of what's coming up for me in this moment. I don't know if Tina or Jess, if you have anything to add.
So I just put in a link in the chat that I actually looked for when I saw that question pop up. And I just want that, like, leads me to say a lot of what we talk about in coaching, we might not always have the answers, but it's about, like assisting in the research process. Like, come sit down with me, let's Google it, let's find out. Sometimes we might use our own personal experience. You know, some of us are a little older than our clients, so we have that experience of going from doctor to doctor or navigating insurance. So we sort of impart some of our own wisdom. So, you know, we use a lot of resources that we have available, but it's mainly about the experience of just being there for the client, like Amy said, and like really helping them slow down and figure it out.
That's great. Awesome. We got another question. Can you walk us through how a young adult would access this service through Fusion and the dorm? Criteria, cost, and process. I can let you all go first, and I can also kind of share a Fusion side of things, but if you quickly go first. So at Fusion Academy, we also do offer some executive functioning. It's just not necessarily at this level. And so this level is kind of really what I think about as the gold standard. At Fusion, we're able to really incorporate some of the basic fundamentals within our core curriculum and our lesson planning. For students that have used both of our services in the past, it's really about that reinforcement that I think Tina spoke about quite a bit of, how do we work collectively? How do we communicate effectively? Things like that. I can let the dorm team get in a little bit more about the criteria and cost, but another really great thing is just location. The dorm's right in the center of DuPont, and that's where one of our Fusion Academy schools is in DC. It's only an 8-minute walk away. And so we've had students also just kind of go between campuses, go between programs, just for ease of access. But I don't know who would be at the best to kind of talk through criteria at the dorm, but that's kind of some of the ways that we support it at Fusion.
I'm happy to hop in here with guiding a little bit of the dorm process. And so ultimately, if someone is interested in seeing if the dorm services are for their child, their young adults, what you would really do is call and set up what we call a meet and greet. And so really starting with just first coming in and seeing the dorm, getting a feel for the energy of the space, seeing the community, the clinical staff, and usually the client and the family may join for that meet and greet, and there's sort of discussion of what's feasible and what are the supports that person needs. And so at the simplest level, at our most basic level, we have sort of one-on-one sessions, and that is at a rate of $300 an hour. And then beyond this, that's like the a la carte, I would say. We call it our tier 6. We use a tier system. So beyond that, if someone has needs that would be best served by meeting their coach more than once a week, or having a coach here, having a therapist, and being a part of some of our community group programming, which is both therapy or social skills, it can range beyond just learning a specific style of intervention and learning specific skills. But we have things like executive functioning group and cognitive behavioral therapy and sexuality and identity, relapse prevention, nutrition. So that's just to kind of give you a brief sampling. Yoga, I can't forget, mindfulness. I could keep going, but ultimately, we work within a tier system. So tiers 1 through 5, and with our tier 5 being the lowest number of clinical hours a client can receive. So tier 5 is up to 3 hours a week, and tier 1, is actually up to 30 hours of clinical programming a week. So really big difference between those two tiers. And someone who is perhaps taking a break from school, really managing their mental health, just got out of a residential facility, they might be better suited for a higher tier, like tier 1 or tier 2, to first get established, get grounded, and then kind of work their way through the tier system. Someone who is in school, who's at Fusion, who may have class demands, maybe they will kind of fit more in that center tier 3, which is up to 12 hours a week. And that can be the one-on-one sessions, the group programming, the family therapy, or parent coaching. And that $300 an hour was for our a la carte tier 6. Tiers 5 through 1 really range, with each tier having a different price range. But I believe it goes from about $2,000 for tier 5 all the way up to $20,000 a month for tier 1.
Awesome. Great question. Thank you. And does anyone else have any other questions? If not, then, please.
I do. I have a question. The mention was the location of the dorm is in DuPont in DC. Is there any equivalent or recommendations? I'm assuming that they would need to work with the client in person, obviously. So what about the Northern Virginia area, like up towards Leesburg and, you know, the northern part of Virginia? Are there any equivalents to the dorm or any recommendations for this type of service up in this area?
The dorm in many ways is a unique program, and it has really served to fill a gap, I think, that exists within the community and certainly in other areas as well. So of course, because we're here located in DC, that does give us a limited range, but we work with a lot of families that are further away, that do commute to this area for our program. We also see clients and families virtually. So in-person programming is a huge component, and it's perhaps a preference. It's often a preference for our young adults that might be struggling with isolation, might be dealing with not seeing people, not getting out of their house, not building a community. But we do have opportunities and offerings to work with clients in a virtual setting. In terms of other programs that are in the Virginia area, I'm not quite as familiar with something that would serve the same as the dorm. There may be some individual professionals or people who would do like life skills coaching, or maybe have one of the components of that coaching piece, but not necessarily the family work or the group therapy, which can be involved, can be a part of it for clients. I don't know, Tina or Jess, if either of you have any other ideas of other resources.
Unfortunately, I don't. I'm sorry.
What came to mind for me was Encore outpatient services. They're not just for young adults, and yeah, I wouldn't consider them similar, like the same as us, but they do have an intensive outpatient program, and they do treat a large amount of issues in one place.
Awesome.
And they are in Arlington.
Thank you. Can you speak to the success with virtual clients? Like you said, you do have some virtual clients. How successful is it working? If they don't need really intense, like they would not be like at a tier 1, more like a tier 6, like working virtually. How successful has it been?
I think there can be great success with virtual clients. That's obviously going to depend a lot on the unique individual and their needs. Let's say we have someone who is struggling with internet addiction, or with creating friendships and community, and is isolating. It might be recommended that in-person programming would better serve them, or may have other utility, other benefits to it. But ultimately, I know I can speak really for myself. I have a number of clients that I work with completely virtually, and I'm really happy and proud of them and the success that they've had. And that's really worked for them. That's worked for me. It's cut down on them not showing up, right? Because they don't have to get here. They just have to log in. And so it can reduce some barriers. And with the platforms that we use with Zoom, we have the opportunity to do things like share a screen and watch as they type that email to their professor, watch as they go online and, get their bank account set up, or whatever it is that they're doing. So we do have a lot of things that we can do using a virtual platform. And I would say that the success of that largely depends on the unique attributes of the clients. However, and as I mentioned in my experience, I think it's been incredibly successful, and also kind of lends itself to continuing that relationship and continuing that connection. So sometimes as our clients progress through treatment, they actually move out of the area or they go elsewhere. And clinical coaching is still something that can continue beyond that if it's at the best benefit of the client. And so I think virtual has been a really great option, and is here to stay in many ways.
Thank you. Would you then be doing a virtual kind of assessment initially to make sure that they would be a good fit for virtual?
Absolutely. So that would be a part of the assessment phase and the initial sort of admissions piece. And so before we really even connect someone, a client, with a coach or therapist, or a coach and a therapist, and maybe another schedule, ultimately, first kind of in the admissions process, there's a lot of discussion around what does this person need? What are they looking for? What might be important to them and important for them? And we're really, truthfully, pretty honest upfront with clients and families if we think, hey, maybe virtual is not going to be the best idea for you. So you'll get that direction from our team here, and that would be part of the process upfront.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And then there was one more question in the chat, just if the dorm accepts insurance. And I wasn't sure the answer on that one.
So we do not accept insurance. We do work with SJ Advocates. It's a organization that helps families to then actually submit the services that are provided here to their insurance for reimbursement or partial reimbursement, depending on their insurance. And so no insurance accepted up front. However, there is that process of being able to hopefully be reimbursed for a good portion of the clinical services that are being offered.
Got it. Awesome. Well, if there's anybody else have any further questions for our dorm team? Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And I hope you got as much out of this as I did. And thank you to everyone at the dorm for presenting tonight. It was really helpful to see the case studies and just kind of get a better understanding of therapeutic coaching. And thanks again to everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.